This is Ashley Hawkins, and I am the manga librarian. And today we are talking about light novels, or ranabe or raitanaberu, which is just light novels. Light novels are something that you've probably seen, maybe, hopefully, if you're in the midst of collecting manga. And there's something that maybe you've collected by accident. And I'm going to explain to you what light novels are. I explain a little bit about their relationship to manga, and also make a case for why you should be collecting them, even though they are not manga. So let's go ahead and get into it. So let's just start right off the bat and get into what is a light novel. So a light novel, or a raito noberu, or ranabe, is a style of Japanese young adult novel. So they're YA novels, but from Japan. They primarily target high school and middle school students, but they have a more universal appeal. It's just that's who they're targeting. The protagonists are typically that age group. But sometimes they go a bit older. Sometimes protagonists are into their 20s. It's not a defined thing. So it really is very similar to the young adult landscape right now in the Western world. The term light novel is actually a wasei igao. Ego? Sorry. That's what they call a Japanese term that is formed from words in the English language. So it really is light novel. And they're often called ranabe or elen in English. They're usually about 50,000 words in length. So they're actually fairly short. They're collected into paperbacks, and those paperbacks usually cost about 540 yen. So they're actually really affordable, but they also come out fairly consistently, so it's deceptive. So 540 yen is approximately $5, depending on what the rate of exchange is at the moment. The thing is, light novels have a very, very dense publishing schedule, so they get published very regularly. There can be multiple coming out in a year, whereas, if we're waiting for, as school librarians or librarians who serve teenagers, we know that a young adult novel that's in a series, we might be waiting, 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 years for the next book in a series. A light novel, you're probably gonna wait 6 months, maybe. It's a very high turnover rate. The publishing industry in Japan is just very different than it is here in the United States. Authors just in general tend to have a very dense publishing schedule. Some authors are even publishing chapters serialized in monthly anthology magazines, and then those chapters get condensed into volumes the same way you do with manga. It's not as popular, but it does happen. Also, a lot of light novels start off as web novels, meaning that they start off on a free website where, think of Wattpad, and that free website provides hosting to a story. If the story becomes popular enough, typically a publishing house will reach out to the author of that story and offer them a publishing deal, edit the story, provide them with an illustrator, and publish the story, usually with even alternate endings and side stories and all sorts of new adaptations. Web novels are actually, although web novels are actually pretty popular here in the States, they are tremendously popular in Asia, particularly East Asia. Not just Japan. Korean web novels are exploding right now, and they typically get turned into what's called manhwa, and Chinese light novels have the same phenomenon going on. So typically you think of China, Korea, and Japan as being like these three powerhouses of web novels. There's also Taiwan has a very big presence, as does Thailand, and I think a few other regions sort of have this really great web novel presence. But Japan has a very formulated way of going after these authors and offering them contracts and then turning those contracts into a very lucrative sort of business. And what typically happens with light novels is they will usually get turned into a manga, and then after they are turned into a manga, get turned into an anime. Sometimes it skips the manga step, but not usually. And that's actually what creates all this confusion, because I've heard the story before. Someone wanted to order a series. A librarian wanted to order a series. It recently was adapted into an anime. They wanted the manga. And they thought they were ahead of the curve, and they bought it. They had it delivered. It came in from Follett, and they opened it, and it was printed wrong. It wasn't printed the way manga's printed. And then they opened it, and there were words instead of pictures. And they realized they bought a regular book instead of a manga. And they felt frustrated and confused, because why? The cover looks like a manga. There are manga people on it. It has the Japanese style. Why did this happen to them? And there's a couple reasons why this happens. And I understand the frustration. And it doesn't help that you really have to know the differences between the manga illustrators and the light novel illustrators. For example, I'm reading a series called The White Cat on the Dragon King's Lap. And I'm reading it in both manga and light novel form. And I know that the mangaka is different from the manga illustrator than the illustrator for the light novel. So when I see the covers, I know instantly which one is the manga and which one is the light novel. But somebody who doesn't know that would have no idea that this one illustrator is not the mangaka, and this is clearly the mangaka, and that's why there's this many listed here and this many. So there's all these things that create confusion. So there's that. There's also the fact that companies such as Overdrive list light novels as comics and graphic novels. Why they do that, I'm not sure. I think they're trying to help. I do. I really do think they're trying to help, because light novels are inherently more popular with the people who read manga. They're probably not going to circulate super well with your traditional YA audience. Although I wish they would, because honestly, your tradition there's a lot of the tropes and things that happen in a light novel are basically the same as what happens in your traditional YA novel. It's teenagers, it's teenage issues. Typically are the protagonists. There's nothing that should be a barrier other than the artwork on the cover. But the artwork on the cover typically just draws in manga readers much easier than it does your traditional reader. But then there also is created this dichotomy where somebody who is looking for a manga is going to be frustrated when they open it up and it's a regular book. So I don't know. I don't know why they do it. I wish there was a better categorization, because I know that a Japanese library would have them in their own category and would not put them together. But we're not in Japan. So that's what creates this confusion. It's partially book jobbers creating this. It's partially unfamiliarity with the format, and just honestly, the art style makes you think it must be a comic inside, but it's not. So those are things to keep in mind. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't get them. And here's why you should still collect light novels, and how I kind of capitalize on them. First off, I want to say that light novels are actually really highly cherished by certain groups of otaku. I myself love light novels. I just find them highly readable. They are super enjoyable. I just love them. They're like a comfort food for me. I've been reading them for a while, and part of it comes from how hard they were to access for so long. The first light novel I read was the Full Metal Panic light novels. I have the collector's edition now, but I read them as a Tokyo Pop edition, and I basically, I read what Tokyo Pop was able to produce until they fell apart. And that was very unfortunate for me, because Tokyo Pop was publishing a few different light novels. Full Metal Panic being one, 12 Kingdoms being another. Just some really great light novels were actually picked up by Tokyo Pop and then got caught in licensing hell because of what happened to Tokyo Pop. But currently, there are actually licenses being picked up at a tremendous rate. J Novel Club is doing amazing work right now. Every print light novel I have in front of me as an example is a J Novel Club book. They're just doing a really good job. Like, I love this edition of Full Metal Panic. So well done. The translation is so good. Really high quality printing. I mean, just everything looks so good. So, looking inside this light novel, we can kind of talk about what goes on inside of a light novel. So light novels are written at a very fast pace, typically. They commonly include cliffhangers, partially because of their serialized nature. Chapters are short. They are accompanied with illustrations. So on this cover, you can see we have the author, but we also have the illustrator, Shikidoji. Sometimes the illustrator becomes the mangaka when it translates to manga. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the illustrator just gives their designs over to the mangaka, because sometimes illustrators are not necessarily mangaka. They prefer to do large illustrations and just cut off from there. Kind of similar to the comics industry. There are some people who majorly prioritize doing like covers and things. So when you're reading a light novel, like I said, it moves at a very fast pace. It's just easily consumed. And sometimes it's actually kind of complex. Some concepts, especially lately, can be fairly high level. Like Full Metal Panic is an action comedy, but it also has some fairly dense mecha related topics. Another series that I really, really love and recommend to librarians is Ascendants of a Bookworm. I'll do anything to become a librarian. And this is about someone who is reincarnated into a world after having worked her entire previous life to become a librarian, and she will do anything to become a librarian in her next life, even though books are actually a rarity in her new world. And she is working on bookmaking and printing and, making books more accessible. And it can actually go quite deep into politics, and this is actually a really, really good read. And there's quite a few volumes now that have been translated. And there's an anime. So some of these can actually be quite elevated, but some are also just funny. These books are absolutely perfect for reluctant readers. They are also perfect for when a teacher comes in and then turns to her class or his class and says, "You're not allowed to read a graphic novel for your independent reading. Do not check out a graphic novel," which, is basically my worst nightmare, but it happens consistently. When that happens, I have a light novel section. Because inevitably there's going to be the student who, one, wants to challenge the teacher, and two, really does just want to check out a volume of manga. And for those students, I have certain books that I'll recommend, but also if I know the student is a huge fan of anime and manga, especially if they're one of like my anime club regulars, I'll look at them and go, "Hey, we have this whole section, and it's regular books, and I treat it like I'm telling them this big secret, and I'm like, listen, it's totally anime, but it's a book. They can't give you any guff about it." And sometimes the teacher will see the cover and go, "Oh, that's a comic book," and I'll go, "No, it isn't. It's a regular book. It just has a drawing on the cover." And then I've made everybody happy, because these books are still good. Like, they're good. That just is what it is. And they're well written. They're well written enough to be translated from another language, and to have entire media properties written up, made from them. Of course, so was the manga, but whatever. So these are a great middle ground. It's a good secret weapon for a school librarian. Because ultimately, I can't say anything about what goes on in somebody else's classroom. Even no matter how many times I send articles, no matter how many times I have, I provide my professional opinion, it doesn't really matter. Some people, you're never going to change their minds about graphic formats. And that's sad, because ultimately those people are missing out. Their students are missing out. But at the end of the day, I need to get books into the hands of kids. And this is what I'm going to do. And these are good books. So, and there are some light novels that are just unbelievably good. Like I said, I read a lot of them in my free time. I don't even know how many are on my iPad right now. They're just really good reads. They're a really good silver bullet for reluctant readers. And they're good gateways either direction. A good gateway to young adult novels, or a good gateway to more manga. A good gateway to reading more of anything, because I'm just happy as long as people are reading. And a good gateway for participating in more library activities. A lot of these series are things that we'll watch in anime club, so that'll bring them into anime club, which, it all pays off. But the main thing is for you as the librarian to be very clear that these are light novels. So first off, I do not label these as graphic novel. I label them as fic. So this is actually from my library. I brought it back with me I brought it with me, last March, thinking, I'll need something for the couple of weeks that we're going to be closed. Turns out to be over a year now. And so I label them as fic. They're fiction. They are not graphic novels, although they have illustrations inside of them, but that does not make them a graphic novel. I want to be very clear to students that they are not graphic novels. I don't want the students to be confused. On Sora, I have them in their own list. So I have sort of siphoned them So I have a list that's just light novels, and there's an explanation of what they are. And then I have my comics and my manga list separate. I had to turn off the auto listing. I know it's way easier to turn on an auto list for comics, graphic novels, and manga within Sora. I turned it off because it automatically puts light novels in there, and I don't want the confusion to happen, because honestly all that's going to happen is they're going to open it, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to return it. And yeah, that might up my circulations, but that doesn't mean that the student's going to read it, and it may turn them off from using Sora. So I don't want that to happen. So I've curated the lists so that, light novels are in their own thing. Like I said, I'm very clear about what they are. I promote them as their own thing. I also talk about like how badly I wanted these when I was their age. There were certain light novels that I wanted in about 2005-ish, and I definitely couldn't get them. Like, you could only really get them through fan translations that were online, and they were super shady, and you couldn't really trust them, and it wasn't good. So I talk about like how covetous this is and how special it is that these exist, and I think that has really helped with circulating them. It's been a little harder in COVID time, but they do circulate, and they are still being used. I still recommend them fairly regularly. We just added quite a few, actually, to our collection, because I want to make sure we've got a solid basis of them because of all the reasons I've listed. I really do think that they are incredibly helpful, especially in a school library. And they're just fun reads. And a fun read is always good to have on hand. So that really kind of covers everything I wanted to say about light novels. I don't want to go too crazy. If you'd like some recommendations, I'd be more than happy to recommend several series. There are so many that are out there that are so good. I have recently made the switch to a site called Bookwalker for all of my light novel and comic needs, or not comic, all of my light novel and manga needs outside of what I borrow from libraries. And that's been really great. I really recommend just kind of looking around on Bookwalker and seeing what's out there. But yeah, that's where I'm going to end today. I hope this was helpful to you. I hope this clarified some things, and I hope you really consider adding light novels to your collection if you haven't already. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.